Hello, I'm Emily. I work under the name The Metalsmith, but I quite like dabbling in various different objects that they can be bearable pieces. The pieces that I create, I like to involve themes of humanity in various different ways, depending on the collection, depending on the project and the message I'm trying to share. And so far, the two main collections that I've released since properly starting my business donate portions to charity as well. So the pieces that I have in the exhibition, I have one right here. This is the influx brooch. So it's a little person made of sterling silver. Is made with quite a fluid technique, so he's quite wibbly, and he appears with lots of different backgrounds. So just go with the aesthetics of the piece for a second, and then I'll explain a bit more about the story. Well, that one's a bit trickier to see. And number 3. So it's interchangeable, lots of different features, lots of way of wearing it. All of the pieces move around. They're only attached to him with a single, it's difficult to see because it's getting dark, a single pin. So just like a simple brooch that pops on and you clip the back on. All of these pieces have a little hole through them, so he just slots straight on. They can spin, they can turn around, some of them have different textures on the back. And this piece is part of a bigger collection called Catharsis, and it's all about kind of coming to grips with life and adulthood in particular. I think I've lived quite a simple life, but coming to terms with growing up and the responsibility and, the leaving uni and just being out in the world and figuring out what to do next and not being told what to do. You've got to deal with that all yourself. There's nobody saying you go in this direction. There's no one higher up than you that gets to tell you that. You've got to figure out all these things by yourself. And generally it's quite chaotic. So from like the bigger world issues, we've just experienced a glow nobody was prepared for, and people are still kind of bumbling through it. It's a very chaotic period in time, and there's all kinds of different things going on in the world. And then you've got things on a personal level. So you could have like a crazy busy day where you've got about 15 different tasks and your brain feels like mush and you're just trying to muddle through and get those tasks ticked off your checklist. And I think this brooch influx kind of for me at least, it represents those ever-changing situations, like putting yourself in all these different positions. You've got all these different surroundings. There's always so much going on. And it actually started because I didn't really want to decide on a background, but as I started playing with it more and experimenting with the different techniques and materials, so there's a mixture of copper and ebony, and various different things. As I started thinking about it more, I was like, wait a second, this is this is something a bit bigger than just experimenting with the materials, experimenting with the aesthetics. So that's the one piece, and that, as I mentioned before, I like making my pieces so that they can be enjoyed as an ornament if you're not wearing them, because they are bigger pieces. You're not going to be able to wear them all the time. And I think it's can be a little naive to expect people to. So I've prepared a little, is that the right way around? A little stand. So this one is just a simple like A-frame, so as not to distract from the piece, because the piece isn't about the stand. We just want it to be able to stand up, and it just, all of the backgrounds sit on this little ledge here, and it sits quite nicely. I would rest it on something, but my hand's quite uneven and I don't want to make a fool of myself by dropping it all over the place right now. But yeah, it's just, it's as simple as that. And then the other piece is, again, response to the whole chaos catharsis. In such a chaotic world, I find making, being able to have the focus of this. So how do I, make the catch click? Or how do I get this to stand up? What slight angle do I need to tweak to make sure this works? And I think it's a little self-explanatory how chaotic it is, but making the piece itself is very cathartic for me. The texture of it, it's a highly polished piece, as is all of the pieces in the collection. And so it's quite a soothing object to hold. It's got some really raised, quite larger bits that is similar to holding a very smooth pebble, but like a really, really, really smooth pebble, because I spend hours polishing these things. And after getting all my grubby fingers on them tonight, I will be polishing them again before Monday. But yeah, so again, similar kind of principles. This one does already kind of stand up by itself. It has a double pin catch. So it already acts like a bit of an easel, and those pins, they are a little stiff, so it's more secure, but they pop into a little catch there, and that's very secure. You do need strong fingers to be able to pop it in and out, but that works quite nicely. But for the exhibition, I wanted to make the stand a little fancier. So I do have a block of ebony here, which it slots, again, nothing too fancy so as not to distract from the piece, although the piece is quite a statement in itself, but it slots in and stands up. Even if you give it a little wiggle, it stays upright. And that's what I have to share. So I use a technique called casting. The general process is that you make a model. It gets posted off to an external company. I used to do it whilst I was at uni, but the equipment's quite expensive and takes up a lot of space, and I just don't have the capacity for that in my workshop at the moment. But fingers crossed, I get a more compact version in the next year and I can do it myself. But the essence of casting, you've got a little model, it gets sent off, it gets put into plaster, the model gets disintegrated or melted out, the plaster gets turned the other way, and metal gets poured in. And then when it comes back to me, I chop off any excess, I polish it up, I attach all the little fixings, anything it needs to stand up or to be attached to anything. Some of them don't need it, things like rings. They don't need any additional things because it's built into the model before it goes off to casting. And yeah, I've spent a lot of time over the years experimenting with various different materials and seeing what effects you can get. And it's a very exciting process. It's a little bit controversial in the jewelry world because it can be seen as an easy route, or it can be seen quite negatively because it's a process that's used a lot in mass production. But the way that I produce pieces, they are completely one-off. There is no way I'm replicating them. It's, the replication, the mass production, there's lots of molds involved, but these are one-off pieces. Once they're cast, the model's gone, no repeating them. Now I find it, even for the pieces that, so I've got, as a separate thing, I do have other pieces in this collection that are slightly more accessible end of the price spectrum. They are replicated, but because of the method I use, even those aren't the same. They're just kept simple so that I can produce them easily, so that I can make them accessible and slightly more affordable to those who don't have so much disposable income. Don't get stuck in a habit. Don't get stuck in a rut. Make sure that as much as you need to make the bread and butter things to, you know, make the money so that you can earn a living, so that you can survive, make sure that you return to a sketchbook or you return to the drawing board and you experiment and you have fun with the art pieces, because you will lose the essence of what makes it enjoyable if you get stuck in that. If you make it all about the money and you forget about, obviously you do need money to survive because of the society that we live in and all of that, but if you lose the creativity, if you're just making the same thing over and over again, it will slowly drive you insane. And I think that's it's hard to make the time for the experimenting and the playfulness and making a mess, making mistakes, making failures that you don't want anybody to see because they're just awful displays of making. But they're really important for learning and progressing and developing your skill and your portfolio. But they won't happen unless you make time for it. Schedule it in, write it in your diary, make sure you return to that. Go have a look at, you know, other influences. Don't just look inside your discipline, inside your field. Look at painters, look at ceramicists. And the same thing goes for any other budding creatives. Don't just look inside your field, because there is, you know, you might be more easily influenced by those people who do similar work, and you may find yourself doing something a little bit more similar. But if you look at a wider spectrum of things, and there are so many different art mediums and you know, sculptures and all kinds of things, if you look at those for inspiration, you watch how the lines work, how they're built, and all of these kind of things, your brain will just bubble up. There will just be so many ideas. There's endless possibilities, and I think people can get a little bit stuck in wanting to be like this person or wanting to create a piece like that they forget how to make things different. Because we have, as humanity, we've been creating for so many years that it is, you know, there probably aren't any ideas left that haven't already been done, but you can still do them in a different way. Like, it's not, you don't have to make the same thing as another person, or you don't have to follow a particular style. Find a way to put your own creative spin on it and make your voice heard. Find your reasons for doing so. So obviously we have the lovely exhibition coming up at the end of this month. I will be taking part in a pop-up shop in Farnham in Surrey throughout October, and that's where you'll be able to find all of the slightly smaller pieces, the slightly more wearable pieces. I have my website, which has all of that I've ever created, all of the different pictures of all of the very varied pieces are all on there. And I'm very excited to also be exhibiting just off of Oxford Street in the 7th to the 13th of December this year with another collection of pieces as well.